The average is we publish like 630 articles a week. We have 700 journalists based across the world who write, some of them write really, really niche topics. So ultimately, we're a subscriptions business. We've got to be looking at churn. We have to know if people are cancelling their subscription. We were like kids on Christmas morning, opening up a box and being like, we need to play with every single thing in here and we need to change every single thing that we're doing. And realistically, we would still be working on the first sort of iteration of anything at this point if we tried to do that.
So one of the things we've never really spoken about on the podcast is personalization and kind of like automation in that world. And that is your world.
Yeah, I mean, it's my world, it's my passion. Is that too lame to say?
Not lame at all.
I think there's something, the FT has this sort of plethora of content to choose from and a really kind of diverse subscriber base. And the only way to engage customers with the right articles, the right tools and features to actually, get the most out of their subscription ultimately comes down to being able to personalize their experience as much as possible. And realistically, the only way to personalize stuff to the extent that you need is to automate it, because there's, you can't manually build and curate the amount of communications that you'd need to do it yourselves.
And to almost spell it out a little bit, what channels are we talking about here? Obviously, I think when you talk about stuff like automation, personalization, channels like email spring to mind. But are you working across email? Someone's logged in experience on the website. Can you talk about a little bit about where?
Yeah, great question. So when I started the FT, it was mostly email, and it was mostly, I guess, sort of linear campaigns that have a start and an end. Whereas what we might do, as I say, is sort of meet people on site with, say, an on-site message, but we didn't really have the tech to be able to do that. We've since invested really heavily in our automation platforms, and what that has allowed us to do is to expand out of one singular channel with a little bit of on-site message built in, and really try and meet the customers where they are. So we can do on-site messages looped in with the email experience, but we can also theoretically do push notifications in our app, or in-app notifications that sort of appear as that inbox message. We also, one of the channels that we consider ours as part of that automation world is, say, our customer care or subscriber experience. If someone is having a conversation with someone on the phone about our app, we should be able to reflect that in the other channels that we're talking to them on.
Wow.
So it's about sort of recognizing which channels are, the traditional ones, so email and on-site, but also really trying to meet the customer where they're actually engaging with you.
Let's say I'm interested in the music business, but actually I'm reading lots of content on the FT about the transport business. So does my behaviour outweigh what I've told you, or does what I've told you outweigh my behaviour?
Good question. I think for us, we have so many touch points. We've got so many automated campaigns set up that what we're trying to do is, we're not trying to make that decision for you about what's more important.
Interesting.
We're trying to engage with you on the channel where you're currently enjoying that and give you the right information at that time. For example, we have a headlines campaign that goes out twice a week that kind of goes, this is what others in your industry and region are reading. And so if you're falling into that targeting pool, that's that would kind of cover that bit, and we'll keep an eye on how well you're engaging with that. But at the same time, when you're on site, if you're going, well, actually, I'm reading this and I'm signing up to this topic, that's when we'd probably also meet you with an on-site message to say, look, I can see you're really interested in, say, food and drink. Why don't you sign up to our weekend newsletter that covers a lot of that? And what we'll keep an eye on then is, well, how much are you reading that newsletter versus how much are you actually engaging with that industry and region headlines campaign, so we then know where to focus our efforts a little bit more.
That's really cool. So it keeps up with someone's behaviour and changing interests. And
absolutely. And the other thing
really cool.
we try to do a lot is, don't want to use the word cheat, but we rely a lot on data science models to help us with that, because otherwise it is still an element of guesswork. So, we have a bunch of models that help us establish if someone should be reading broader or more in depth. So for example, if all your reading is about the music industry, we have a model that will help us say, well, actually, that's fine. If this person keeps just reading about the music industry and keeps getting stuff about that particular topic, they're probably going to stay engaged, and we'll kind of let you know if that looks like it might start to drop off. Whereas if you're only reading about the music industry, we might have other signals that tell us, actually, this person really also needs to read something else. Otherwise, they're going to get bored because they're going to run out of things to read. And clearly they're not reading as, they're not having as many quality reads as they should be reading. So we need to expand their breadth of reading a little bit. So that also helps us.
Amazing. You touched on a couple of measurements there, like in terms of like the number or frequency of engagements, the frequency of reads, or visits to the site, email opens, subscriptions. What KPIs are most important for you in this environment? So how do you know if you're getting it right versus not quite getting it right?
Sure. So I guess we think about our reporting in two main areas. One is the business impact. So ultimately, we're a subscriptions business. We've got to be looking at churn. We have to know if people are cancelling their subscription. And if people are entering into a bunch of campaigns and it seems to be doing nothing to reduce the cancellation rate, then that's really, really important for us to know. Before that, we have the other kind of big business impact KPI we have is something called habit, which tells us how often people are visiting the site. So we have a bunch of analysis and insight that tells us ideally people should have, say, a twice weekly habit or a daily habit in order to prevent churn. So that's what we're kind of looking at way down the line. But then also, as the automation team, we need to be letting the other marketers around us know how well our campaigns are vaguely performing. So we'll look at all of the sort of traditional email metrics like open rate, subject line, click-through rate, unsubscribe rate, etc., newsletter sign-ups or unsubscribes and things like that. And I think what is really key is that for every automated campaign that we have, we know what the objective of that campaign is. Is it to get people to sign up to a newsletter? Is it to get people to undo their cancellation? And therefore, should we be looking at open rate? If the open rate is sky high, but the click-through rate is really low, but actually it helps people, it's helping people self-serve so their habit increases, then that's what we should be looking at. And it's, we have our automation platform has a lot of sort of flexibility around reporting. So we can build really specific reports that help us actually know what's going on based on what that campaign should be doing.
Amazing. I really like the notion of everything has to have its purpose. So that campaign or that email or that area of what you're doing has to serve a specific purpose. Therefore, it has a specific KPI and objective.
Absolutely.
And it makes it black and white, doesn't it?
Yeah, it takes the guesswork out of it, which again, I think for me is the whole point of automating. We're not sitting there trying to figure out on a Monday, what should we send, who should we send it to, and do we know if it's working? We know exactly what we're trying to do. We know what the ultimate business objective is, and we know how each campaign is going to get us there. So we know what to look at. Yeah,
because ultimately, I guess, if you're doing a great job, churn rate decreases, and people stay longer, and engagement increases.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I think when I first joined, my line manager at the time was like, ultimately, what we want to do is put the retention team out of work, because we just want to be engaging people so well that they don't even think about having to renew. That's the dream. And obviously, in reality, that's not how it works. But what we're looking at is are those experiences we're creating for the customer engaging them in the right way so that they don't cancel, and all the other stuff feeds into that.
Just on a personal level there, did you go, I love that, there's an opportunity there, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring and just go for it and almost create your own job with it?
I would love to give myself that amount of credit. I think there was definitely...
you clearly love doing it.
I really do. That's the thing.
You found your thing.
I found my absolute niche. And I think what was great is that I was loving it. Absolutely. We started on this migration, and I was getting more and more involved and taking on more and more of the project and going, oh, this is really interesting. This is kind of what I used to do at The Economist, but even better now. And this tool's really amazing. And I as I said at the beginning, I really love understanding customers and what drives them. And I was really lucky enough, and I am still lucky enough, to have a really great line manager who kind of recognized that, as well as recognizing the need for that team with that focus. And so was able to say, yes, we need a team to focus on that. And I think Sam is the right person for it. So I was very, very lucky. It fell into place in the perfect way. And I've gotten then to build this team from scratch and really kind of get to grips with this platform. Yeah, it was incredible.
At the FT?
Yes.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is really cool.
And having the best time, which I think is what is really important.
It's great. It's really good. So when you arrive and you go through this process, you get a new platform in place, right, team's there, let's do it. And you're going from because imagine a lot of people who are listening or watching this, watching this episode, probably have a degree of personalization and automation with that in place through, even if it's kind of email, e-com, like abandoned cart emails and, flows like that. So where'd you go next? Because obviously you love this subject and you're clearly good at it. And do you go and do you design like your end goal, like the mega system of automation and personalization, or do you kind of go, right, we've got email in place and it's kind of all right, now let's try and do that, and then that, and then that?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. And I think that it can be very tempting, and this is what we really had to stop ourselves when we got the new platform. We were like kids on Christmas morning, opening up a box and being like, we need to play with every single thing in here, and we need to change every single thing that we're doing. And realistically, we would still be working on the first sort of iteration of anything at this point if we tried to do that. So what we did as the migration was we migrated like for like. We knew those campaigns were kind of old and a bit busted, but we built them in the new platform. We went, okay, right, that'll do. We know that they don't not work.
I guess that's a de-risk as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. We weren't going to build stuff from scratch, brand new, just because we could. We wanted to be really, really careful that the strategy that we had led the way we used the platform, and not the platform create the strategy that then didn't have kind of a clear focus.
To wrap up, what would your biggest piece of advice be for someone who is starting to think about doing this a bit more? Like, where should you start?
I think start by defining where you want to get to, because again, I think it can be, if you've got, whether it's new tech or existing tech, it can be very tempting to say, I want to try all these new things, and actually you're not going to learn anything if you don't have a goal in mind. So sit there and say, actually, what are we trying to do? What is our base idea of what we're trying to do, and how can we measure that? Within that, then you can break that down and say, so for us, again, it's churn. The way that we understand churn is habit. The way we can understand habit are these particular subscriber behaviors that we can then track. And then from there, pick the area of your customer experience where you think you can have the most impact and learn the fastest, so that you can set up one A/B test. Don't try and do everything. Set up one test, learn something from that, and then do 2 tests in the next month, and then learn something from that, and then start thinking wider and go, where else can I apply this? But I think the biggest thing is have your goal in mind and start small so you can work towards that.
Amazing. Look, thank you so much. So that was so interesting.
Great.
It was really cool. And thank you so much for kind of coming on and sharing your experiences. And I am absolutely certain everyone listening to this would have found that really interesting and useful. So thank you so much for doing it.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Honestly, I could talk about automation and personalization, orchestration all day long. So this does have to end sometime, but I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely fine. Thank you.